Welcome to La Verdad Duele. What is that? The truth. The truth that hurts. Even though we're not intending to hurt anybody's feelings, we know that we may share information that many people have strong opinions on. This is solely based on the fact that we love sharing information and we love passing down knowledge. And this podcast is all about that. And we hope you can enjoy that. Let's get to it. Welcome, Puyaka. I'm your host, Tijani Musa, and in the studio today we have a very exciting episode. The guest is going to talk to us about money, and she is going to go into Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which is a PSLF, which is a federal program that forgives student loans for a duration of time. And the guest is going to go into detail about who qualifies for the program, how many years it takes to be in the program, and what are the things that you need to do to stay eligible in the program. And people that qualify for this program are people that work in the government, federal, state, and local government, people that work for nonprofit organizations that are tax exempt under Section 501c3 IRS code, like for nonprofit organizations. Full-time AmeriCorps or Peace Corps volunteers also qualifies for the program, as well as teachers, firefighters, you name it. If you fall into this category, you qualify for the program and you can take advantage of it. The guest is going to go into detail about it. But before we get started and I invite the guest to the studio, I would like to make a disclaimer. This is the first time ever that I'm recording an episode where the guest is calling in to the studio via telephone. So I'm hoping that the conversation is clear enough that you can understand the content and the information that we are discussing. I wanted to make this disclaimer so that you are in the know and you know exactly what is going on in case the voice sounds different. And so I want to make it clear up front before we get started. Now, let me introduce to you the guest. The guest is Rachael Priore. Rachael is a high school special education teacher in Virginia. Rachael teaches social studies and a life skill course for students of diverse abilities. She has passion for preparing teens for an independent and successful life after high school. Rachael is also a blogger who writes about lifestyle blog for adults that focuses on teaching and learning, finance, and work-life balance. Rachael, welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I know that the introduction already stated it, that you are a teacher, and what is going on in our country today is highly stressful, both for the teachers and for students. So I want to get your take. How are you doing mentally, holistically? How are you doing? And have you been in touch with any of your students? And how are the students doing?
So I have not been in touch with my students. I teach 9 through 12, but primarily 11th grade students. So they're about 16. I'm pretty much the last person they want to talk to over the summer. But before we left for the year, I definitely provided my information so they could reach out to me. So far, no one has reached out to me, but I know the minute we're back in school, the emails will come in. And right now, Fairfax County will be starting virtually for the school year. So I'll probably open up some office hours for my previous students to come visit. And it's just been a wild ride here in Virginia. In June, we left not knowing what would happen. And then the county put together like a hybrid virtual, a menu really for teachers and parents to choose from. And because the cases have spiked in our region, we're kind of back to square one with virtual. So I think teachers are really, really good at just waiting until the last minute to worry. This is actually not very new for us. The pandemic is, but things in education change so quickly and sometimes up until the first day of school. So most of us are just trying to relax for the summer because we know it's going to be a pretty long year ahead.
That's for sure. It is going to be a pretty long year ahead for students as well as teachers. I have a friend that is about 60, 65 years old, and she is definitely having a hard time trying to learn the technology to be in place to teach the students. And so,
Absolutely. Yeah. Even young teachers, there's so much technology out there. And depending on what part of the country you live in, you've received a whole variety of training or no training around teaching from home. So I totally understand.
yeah, it's definitely crazy. And how are you doing? Are you doing okay and preparing for the school year?
Like I said, I've kind of like procrastinated any worrying. Much of the decision making is not in my hands, unfortunately. I've attended the school board meetings. I've listened into the conversations. We're just kind of ready for what comes next. I think where my head is at is really being with teachers who are in the at-risk community, whether it's ability, disability, age, health, definitely with my fellow teachers in thought and spirit, because I can't imagine the decisions that they're trying to make right now. And, I think parents, teachers, and students really need to be in on this together. Hopefully we can get through it.
Yeah, it's definitely hard decisions from the leaders of the school system and whatnot, education, and then to the parents and also to the students, because like you mentioned, some of this, at the end of the day, it boils down to access as well. Some of the students don't have access to the capabilities like having functional internet, a nice computer to do your homework from. All of these things are gonna play a role into education, and if whatever the decisions are, if the students have to learn from home what that looks like for the parents and their jobs, this is very, very tough situation for both parties.
Absolutely. And, I have older students, and even when we had to convert at the last minute to virtual learning, a lot of them reached out to me and said, I'm watching my siblings, or they actually took their part-time job to a full-time job to help their families out. And I think students get missed in the conversation a lot. I think parents and teachers are so worried about, well, is my child going to fall behind? And I think our kids right now are learning far more life skills than school could teach them. Unfortunately, they're having to grow up at a pretty young age. But I think, returning in some form in the fall, providing structure for students is going to help a lot. And we have to understand as well, especially because I'm a special education teacher, my students come with a variety of mental health, physical health, and learning disabilities. And so just kind of parading everyone back to school is not ideal either. And so I think we all just have to keep an open mind, and hopefully our counties and our states can really be creative with how we use our municipal spaces, our funding, and not make it about politics, but how can we be creative and how can we kind of make some solutions out of nothing? I think that's where we need to really come together.
That's for sure. We're praying for every party to be involved and the conversations to move to a more positive and compromising way that every party benefits from it. All right, let's shift.
Absolutely.
Let's shift gears a little bit, because this conversation is about money talks. How do you interact with money? Before we get into the actual topic of talking about the PSLF program, which is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which is the main topic of this conversation, how people qualify for it and how you maintain your qualification or eligibility throughout to make sure that you pay out the loan. But before we get into it, how do you interact with money, and what was the lesson, or what was that one thing that got you to be like, no, I should start thinking about money this way and start treating my money this way? What got you into that topic
Definitely.
of conversation?
Yeah, so I think when I graduated with my master's degree, which I actually jumped into right after my bachelor's degree, so I was pretty young. I finished my bachelor's by the time I was 23. And, when you're in your 4-year program and then your master's program or wherever you're at, those bills don't start coming in. And so we go into college with a scholarship freshman year, and then often colleges kind of taper back on that money the further you get, and then you have to take out more loans to cover, because you're in this program, it's going to cost you more money to transfer. And so once I, got that master's degree, walked the stage, I think it was just a few months, and then that first bill came in, and I distinctly remember it was like $950 a month that they expected me to pay on my student loans. And I did have a significant amount of student loans because I had received 2 degrees from 2 public universities, so they weren't private. I went out of state for my bachelor's degree and stayed in state for my master's degree. But I remember seeing that first bill and I was like, well, this is not going to work. And so that's when I started exploring different student loan options for repayment, repayment plans, and the forgiveness program were going to look like. So I think it was once I had that degree, I was applying for, big girl jobs, that I realized that my relationship to money had to change. And I think I always had a positive relationship with money because I worked all through college. I even started working at 16. But when you're making, college money, which is usually server or some kind of minimum wage job, you're so used to living off the bare minimum. And then you go out into the world and the bare minimum doesn't cut it anymore. You can't make your bills off of that. I wasn't willing to have 6 roommates to make sure I could make my bills. So yeah, I think that was the step it up moment for me. Go ahead.
$950 per month. Oh
yeah. If you choose, I think they automatically put you on a 7-year repayment program. So basically whatever you owe divided by 7 divided by 12, it's a lot of money, and so the first bill was $950. And I made that first one, but I made sure to change my repayment plan promptly.
Oh my God. That is crazy. That is almost equivalent to some people's monthly rent.
My rent that year was $1,000 a month. So it was just about my rent. It's insane. And, the interest and this and that, they all add up. And
wow.
if no 18-year-old going into college looks at the fine print. And it's hard if you don't have necessarily the college counselors or teachers or parents that understand that jargon with you. You can get looped into a lot really quickly.
Yep, that's for sure. All right. So you have a website. Your website is your name, pretty much your name.com. So it's Rachael Priore. It's RachaelPriore.com. And on that website, that is also your blog where you share some tips and information. And so you have some writing there. And one of your articles that you wrote, you talked about financial language or financial love language. What is that? And how do you identify that?
Sure. So I think there are a lot of money gurus out there that want to give you, the 12-step plan, the 10-step plan about money. And I think you really need to find a plan that with money that really matches your relationship with money. And your relationship with money, or what I called in the article your love language, is really, what does money do for you? For some people, money is security. So for me, my love language with money is all about security, making sure that I have a secure financial future. And I think very carefully, especially about large purchases, but even some of those mid-sized purchases, I think through very, very strategically. But other people have different relationships with money. Some people don't care very much about it as long as they can live, day to day very comfortably. They're very charitable with their money. Some people view money as a partnership if they're married. And so finding out what your love language is kind of that first step to figuring out, well, how do I get right with money? So if you're someone who cares about security, your financial plan is going to look a little different than someone that values, living in the moment.
That's true. That's true because those are two different people. Somebody lives in the moment. They want to make sure that they have the most upgraded amenities and most upgraded
Oh,
gears. And
yeah. The luxury type,
that's
and there's
right.
nothing wrong with that if you can support that lifestyle without going into debt and, without it being toxic.
That's true. That is true. And okay, so after that article, now let's talk about the main topic. With all these students loan that you've accumulated over the years that you were in school, and then you saw that first bill come to you and you were like, man, I probably can make this first payment but not the following payment within that 7 year period. And then what did you decide to do?
So I definitely did my research after I received my master's degree, which I specifically, so I'll actually back up a little bit. My bachelor's degree, I was more or less undecided until the very end, where I kind of looked at my credits and what that would look like, and then I had aimed to finish the last year of my bachelor's degree with a writing and rhetoric and political science degree. And I thought that's what I was going to do. I really wanted to be a speechwriter. I thought I would work in politics. I went that route and I realized it takes a very long time to get involved in politics. And probably the first 3 years of it is some kind of internship, usually unpaid. And that just wasn't going to work for my situation. And so I became a substitute teacher, and that's where I really fell in love with teaching. I loved working with the middle school kids that I had. And so I specifically pursued my postgraduate degree based on what I wanted my career to look like. I knew I wanted to go into teaching. It took me a little bit longer to figure that out. And so that's what I did. So then to get back to that, knowing that I was a teacher, I knew that there were opportunities for me for loan forgiveness. The most popular one is the Teach Grant. And depending on what specialty you teach in, you can receive a certain amount of money off of your total federal loans, based on your region, what you teach, the area of need that you address. And it's usually a small percentage. So if the average person receives their degree, 30,000 or under, I think like a math teacher could receive up to $7,000. And that just wasn't going to be enough. So I did some deeper digging and I came across the public service loan forgiveness program. And that's really like where my career path and my financial path could really align.
Okay, so what is the public service loan forgiveness program and what are the requirements for that program?
Sure. So the loan forgiveness program basically asks you to make 120 qualifying payments, which if you make every single monthly payment on time based on your loan repayment plan, then it would be about 10 years. So you make your payments for 10 years, and then anything you have after that, as long as it's a federal loan, is forgiven, completely forgiven. But the only thing is, they have some catches in there. You have to have the repayment plan that specifically asks you to pay as you earn. So the more money you make, the more you would pay each month. You have to resubmit your tax information every year to recertify for the program. And you also have to be working in a nonprofit, school, government, or some public service field. So if you're working in corporate America, you would not qualify. So it's specifically for those who are working in public spaces and serving the public good. That can include firemen, police officers, teachers, anyone who works for the state or local federal governments. They can apply for those loans.
Okay, so 120 qualifying monthly payments. With the math, it comes out to like around 10 years. So say you're doing good, and then you miss 2, 3 payments. Is there a way you can talk to them and be like, hey, this month that is coming up, things are really hard and my finances have changed and this is why?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're unable to make a payment, it's not like you're totally scrapped from the program. you can actually take a break and come back to your 120 qualifying payments. So if you're on payment number 80, something happens, you're unable to make your payment either on time or you have to defer for some reason, then you can go ahead and start again at 81 whenever that deferment payment is up. But you have to keep in mind your interest is still stacking up the longer it takes you to complete. So the ultimate goal, and nobody's perfect, I've missed a payment or two and had to push my timeline back. But the ultimate goal is to finish in those 10 years so that you're not accruing any more interest than you need to.
Okay. And on one of the articles that you have on your website, based on the research that you did, you identified one or two reasons why people usually fall off from this 120 monthly payment. What were some of those things that make people become ineligible to meet the qualification of the payment?
So in my research, I found that the number of applicants last year was 102,051 postgraduates. So over 100,000 people applied for this program, meaning they're at their 10 years, and only 1,216 were granted. And so a lot of people look at that statistic and wrongfully think the program denied them. But the number one reason why folks do not get their loans forgiven is simply because they fill out the paperwork wrong. So think about over the course of 10 years, you're probably not working at the same institution or government organization or nonprofit. Especially these days, most of us are changing jobs every 2 or 3 years. And so if you don't properly keep track of those organizations or those employers, the paperwork can become very cumbersome and things can get missed. So the other thing too is just because you've been denied, it doesn't mean you can't apply again. So maybe their calculations were off. That was the number two reason, is if their calculation was off, they thought they were at 10 years, they were really at 9.5. It counts as an application denied, but you're always welcome to reapply once those 10 years have been made. So those are the two reasons why most folks do not either get the loan forgiveness or they become so discouraged they don't even try anymore.
Wow. And then you mentioned also on the article that there is a recertification process in this loan forgiveness. What is the recertification step? What is it?
So there's two things you'll have to do every year to really be on top of it. One of them is mandatory. Every year you have to recertify your employment, your IRS statement, your tax statement. So they look at how much you make and then what percentage of that you should be paying them back based on your income. The second thing is not mandatory, but I highly recommend it so that you have an accurate count of where you are in your repayment. And that is to basically apply for the 10 years every year. So even if you have not made your 120 payments, you can go ahead and apply every single year. And what they basically do is they just update your database and they'll send you a really helpful sheet of how many months you've made your qualifying payments and how many months you have left to go. This is really good too, because if you're not doing your homework to make sure that your employer counts under the service loan forgiveness, it can hit you really hard. If you work at a place for 3 years thinking, they're a public charter school, and it turns out that they're actually not registered as a nonprofit, you could have lost out on 36 payments. And that's a really big deal for someone who is really on track to do this.
Okay. And just because you have a 10-year period doesn't mean that you have to stay with the same employer for 10 years, as long as you're doing public service work, right?
Absolutely. So, for example, I'm working and each of those schools have qualified. I'm all set with those payments. The important thing is to make sure that before you accept a new position, that you make sure that it falls under the category. And that can be as simple as calling the loan forgiveness office and just asking them to verify for you.
Okay. That's very good. All right. And other things that you talk about on your blog, you talk about work-life balance. What do you do for work-life balance, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so we're in the time of quarantine, so work-life balance looks very different now. I would say before quarantine, work-life balance for me was definitely working out and getting outside as much as possible, even in the winter, trying to make sure I'm getting fresh air. I like to meet with friends. I played volleyball for a little bit in like a rec league. So really just being active for me helps me to turn off my teacher brain. Any teachers out there know, like, we'll wake up in the middle of the night with this great idea, or we'll wake up in the middle of the night like, wait, did I grade that kid's paper? So to turn the teacher brain off, I definitely recommend getting active and getting those endorphins.
Okay. I like it.
Gotta stay moving. It's what's keeping us young.
That's right. That's right. And on your blog, you pretty much have it sectioned in three categories. You have teaching and learning, and then finance, and then work-life balance. What is the teaching and learning category? What does that do? And is that you just sharing teaching resources to students and parents? What is that category?
Yeah, so I really created that category as kind of a niche of my expertise. Excuse me. I'm not a loan officer. I like to share my financial tips, but my real expertise is really in teaching and learning. And so this is going on my 8th year in the classroom, and I just remember what it's like to be a first or second year teacher, and it's really, really hard. And I think of the things that I wish I had known going into my first couple of years teaching. And so for teachers, I just want to pass that information along. And for parents, I started writing a few more articles for parents as we switch to online learning, because parents are working from home. Now they have all their children working from home. And so just trying to give some comfort and information to parents who, this is brand new for them.
And what do you say to a new person, or a new young person who is looking into becoming a teacher? What would be some of the advice? Well, right now we're in crazy circumstances, but on a normal times, pre-COVID, what would you say to a new teacher looking to get into the profession?
Yeah, so if you're a teacher looking to either, start your career in education, or you've just, picked up your first teaching job, my number one piece of advice would be to, really listen to the teachers who have been there longer than you. Teaching is always innovative. There's always new things, but we can't discredit some of the old school aspects of teaching as well. And I think as we move forward, especially with whatever comes next in education, it's really important for new teachers to have a mentor teacher, to talk to teachers who are older than them, who have been in the profession longer. Those relationships can really help you from being defeated. And also, like, that old school advice really goes a long way. Some of those tried and true tips and tricks, we're kind of getting into like this blended learning, hybrid technology teaching. But some of the fundamentals, I would say most of them are still the same and are really great to hold on to as a new teacher. My second point of advice would be to either research or seek someone who can help you with efficiency. I've mentored a few teachers in the last couple of years, and it's no surprise that it's overwhelming. Teaching takes a lot of time in front of students, but the behind the scenes work is just insurmountable. And so I always, recommend that mentor teachers talk through their mentees with, okay, what does your class time look like? What does your lesson planning look like? And often as new teachers, like, we're not taught the most efficient way to do things. So those are my two pieces of advice. Definitely link up with your colleagues who have been there a little bit longer. And then to also work on your efficiency, because that work-life balance is important. No teacher should be up till midnight planning for the next day. It's not fair, and it's not, there's no longevity in that.
Yeah. I think I have experience with a teacher. I'm not going to go into it, but I've seen her work like 13, 14 hours. And she used to stay at work until like 8 p.m. and then she comes home and still continue to work. But we're not
Yeah.
going to get into that.
But it's really like, I know my first couple of years teaching, that was me. Like, I was that teacher until a mentor teacher said to me, did you know you could do it this way and it's so much faster? Or do you know that, you don't have to grade every problem and every piece of paper? And like, my mind was blown. So it's really great to connect with other teachers. And plus, in the age of the internet, most of the stuff you're making is already out there.
Yeah, for sure. I remember as a student, that's the first thing I'll do. I'll Google the I Google the worksheets and try to see if they're already up there and if the answers are there. Uh, hey, I'm using teachers to use our resources around us, and so that's what I was doing.
And the good news is we know students do that too. So
Yeah. All right. So going back to the public service loan forgiveness program, what would be one or two advices that you can provide to somebody looking to apply to it or just looking to sustain their eligibility?
my number one piece of advice would be to do the math. So the PSLF is really, it's meant for students who have a high debt to income ratio. So if you're in public service, you've probably already made peace with the fact that you are not going to make as much money, at least not off the bat, as some of your peers who go into corporate America. Teachers are vastly underpaid compared to certified professions of the equivalent. State and local workers are paid a lot less than those counterparts that work in offices and different in the corporate environments. So if you are someone who has taken out a large amount of student loans and you have a lower income, this program is definitely closer to your goals than some of the other programs. But if you're someone who you know what your income is going to be, at least for the next 5 years, and you have a pretty low debt number, maybe you've taken out $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in student loans, the best thing you can do is do that math for yourself. And if it looks like you can just pay it off by, hitting the grindstone, I definitely recommend that. I don't recommend that anyone, voluntarily stay in debt for 10 years. But if you have a high debt to income ratio, the math does work out where you'll be forgiven more than, a significant amount than if you were to just pay it all outright yourself. And the other thing is make sure that you're going to stay in public service, because the payments under the PSLF are usually smaller. Like I said, my first bill was $950. I paid a fraction of that once I jumped onto the repayment plan. And so you have to make sure that you make peace with whatever career you're in. If you're not loving the nonprofit environment and you tend to jump ship, you're going to lose that loan forgiveness. So those would be my two pieces of advice, would be to do the math and then to make sure you really love your career.
That is for sure. I think it's very important to have an appreciation for the career that you get into, and also being able to wake up every Monday and not thinking that Friday should come by fast. So your weekend. So that is very, very important. But we also have to make it clear that we are talking specifically for federal loans, right?
Correct. So if your family or you yourself took out something with Sally Mae, that is not included. These would be specifically federal loans that were taken out. Even like the Perkins loan does not count because that's taken out directly from your university or college. But ultimately, like if any new college students are listening to this, I do want to add, like, do not bank on this program sticking around. There's been a lot of debate in Congress about getting rid of the public service loan forgiveness program. So this is not permission to like take out all the student loans in the world and think like, well, I'm going to be I'm going to work in public service and therefore it's fine. they've actually considered taking it off the table in the last 2 years. So definitely follow the news and the politics, and be financially wise from the beginning so that you're not crunching these numbers after you graduate.
That is very important. And that brings me to giving this disclaimer that you have on your website that we are not professional. This is not a professional advice. If you require professional advice pertaining to student loans, student debt, or other finances, please seek a professional who is licensed in these areas. And that is very important because that's what you just mentioned in that last part of your advice.
Absolutely. I'm not a financial advisor. This was just an experience that I had that the math worked out for me, and it's worked out for other teachers as well. So I wanted to share that information because some of these programs are really like hidden away. You know, even the fact that only 100,000 people applied for the program is insane if you consider the amount of working folks with degrees. So yeah, I'm not a financial advisor, but definitely wanted to spread the news. If you know someone who would be interested in, and you can forward the information.
That is correct. And you can go on her blog, on her website, just look up Rachael Priore, and then you'll be able to find her on Google. And Rachel, the other thing is that with this financial loan, as of March to September 30, the government actually put a hold on those loans. They paused them. And now that we're approaching September, people should be very wary that the payments are going to start again.
Definitely. And in the nonprofit world, most jobs are based off of stipend positions or grants. And so it's really, really important to have a plan for that when those payments come back. And I know it's tough knowing you're going to be paying and it's not going to count towards your total if you are not working at the moment or you're collecting unemployment. I would say if this plan isn't working for you because of a layoff, definitely call the student loan office. You can go online at myfedloans.com or .org and definitely talk to them and work through your repayment plan, however it needs to be structured. This is a crazy time right now, but those payments are expected to be due back in September. Yeah.
Wow. Great stuff. Rachel, before we end the recording, we've asked you to prepare a letter that you write to a younger self and provide some advice to that young Rachel as she grows up to become the Rachel that you are today. So if you have that letter, before you get into that letter, is there anything else you want to talk about money and anything else you want to say about the PSLF program? Anything else you want to say about your website or people following you on your Instagram before we get into that letter?
I think we've covered everything with the PSLF. I would say for finances, definitely shop around for whoever your financial mentor is. Everyone has a different financial situation and a different relationship with money. So make sure you find a plan that's really right for you.
Okay. All right, then. If you have that letter, read it to us and tell us what kind of advice you're going to provide to that little Rachel as she faces COVID-19 and the rest of the world.
Sure thing. So my letter to self, dear younger self, there's so much advice I want to give you. But first and foremost, know that you're going to be okay. Not just okay, but great. You're going to be successful. You're going to change lives. You are going to be a mentor. You are going to be someone others turn to. You are going to have all the love and support you deserve. Now for the advice. It's going to be tempting to start your life like everyone else. Everyone will be getting their own place and spending every paycheck they get. They will be going out and partying and making it all look so good, but it's empty. Start your life with meaningful friendships, a solid financial plan, and focus on your goals. Read, learn, listen, and observe those who are more successful than you. Despite what your still developing frontal lobe is telling you, you do not know everything. Sacrifice the false sense of freedom the world is offering now for the true financial and spiritual freedom I promise you will receive later. Yours truly, Rachel.
Wow. Amazing. I hear you're going to be successful. You're going to change lives. You're going to be a mentor, spending you're going to meet people that spend every paycheck that they earn, make those meaningful friendships and keeping people close, read, learn, listen. Wow. Amazing, amazing letter. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
This definitely has been fun, and we will be following up with your website, and also we'll be following up with your financial advisors and whatnot. And if we need to come back and re-record another episode as a follow-up, we will reach out to you. Okay?
That sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate everything that you've said on this episode. And if anybody that's listening and they just want to follow up with you and they want to follow up on your Instagram page, they can look up your Instagram page, which is your first name and last name and then blog. Rachael Priore blog is the Instagram page that you can follow Rachel on. And if you have any questions about anything that she's talked about on this podcast, that would be a nice place to contact her. Also, you can also contact her through her website, her blog website as well. Thank you, Rachel, and enjoy the rest of 2020.
Thank you so much for everything you're doing with the podcast. You as well.
There you have it, everybody. If you're listening to this still, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for listening through and through. Make sure if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button so you can get this automatically downloaded the next time new episodes come out. We have a lot more experiences and stories to tell, and I cannot wait to share them with you. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Reviews are always appreciated. Thank you. I appreciate you, and let me know what you think on our Instagram at Verdad Duele Pod. Our team is here to serve you. We look forward to hearing about your successes, and maybe one day we may invite you to the studio to share. We wish you luck. The Verdad Duele family has your back. Thank you so much.